President Trump, sir, your message to the people of Germany. How was your phone call with President Xi of China, sir? Your phone call with President Xi of China.
I'm not friends with anybody. I'm friends with you. But Chancellor, I just want to congratulate you and I want to welcome you to the Oval Office.
Thank you.
It's an Oval Office that's in very good shape. We like fixing things up and having them tippy-top like they have in Germany. They do that in Germany very much.
Thank you, first of all, Mr. President, for your kind invitation to come to Washington, D.C. We are having so much in common, our history. We owe the Americans a lot. We will never forget about that. And so with your German provenance, I think this is a very good basis for close cooperation between America and Germany. So again, thank you. So to let you know, this is the birth certificate of Donald Trump's grandfather, born in 1869, close to Bad Dürkheim.
Right?
Yeah.
That's called
and
Syria's.
His Christian name was Friedrich.
Right. That's Syria's German.
Syria's
right?
German name.
That's Syria's German. That's
My
beautiful.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Fantastic. We'll put it up in a place of honor. Well, maybe we can, let's see, to put it up there someplace. Well, first of all, I'm glad to meet because I've been dealing with the Chancellor and he's a very good man to deal with. He's difficult, I would say. Can I say that? It's a positive.
Go ahead.
You wouldn't want me to say you're easy, right?
No.
Yeah, he's a very great representative of Germany. I think we'll be watching him.
Mr. President,
You speak such good English. Is it as good as your German, would you say? Do
No,
you feel more
my mother
comfortable?
tongue. No, it's not my mother tongue, but I try to.
Very good. You know, it's
President,
it's an achievement, actually.
Thank you.
Any question for the Chancellor? I like his answers much better.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's 8th episode of Cold War 2.0 with our dear friend Tarik Cyril Amar. Tarik, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, and I apologize for coming late to today's stream. As I explained to you, my watch shows 3 o'clock Central European time. And all of a sudden, I receive a message from Tarik, Kevork, I'm in the waiting room. I was like, Oliver. I started running in the apartment to come to prepare the webcam and everything. But here we go. We are 10 minutes late to today's conversation. Tarik, I showed this video at the beginning because I would like to start this conversation with you with this visit of the new Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, to the United States. I've been following the statements of the CDU or the CDU party politicians on Donald Trump in the past years, including Merz himself. And there were accusations against Donald Trump that he is a far-right extremist and that he is an autocrat and that they prefer in the CDU or the CDU a candidate like Kamala Harris during the elections. This was made clear by many of the CDU politicians. And now Friedrich Merz goes to the United States, and it seems that the relationship, the personal relationship between the both sides is not as bad as the relationship between Trump and other world leaders. How did you see this trip of Friedrich Merz to the United States? And do you think that the relationship between Germany and the US are developing or they are regressing after between Trump and Merz?
Look, from what I've read and seen of this trip, right, of Merz to Washington and really to Trump personally, this is what this is, right? It's like visiting an emperor, right? It's pretty unremarkable, to be very honest with you. It's a pretty unremarkable trip. And I think you can see how this is reflected even in some very well-meaning German commentary in the media in Germany, in the sense of well-meaning towards Merz, right? Mm-hmm. As we know, the German mainstream media have become incredibly soft and pliable and usually treat governments and their governments with kid gloves, and this is the same here. So they're trying to make the best of it. And one line in that commentary is to say, well, nothing bad happened. So, but once that's one of your big selling points, you know that nothing very good or remarkable happened either on the other side. Now, to an extent, I can understand it because we know from Trump's temperament, also from experience, for example, with Zelensky, that Trump is capable of humiliating his visitors horribly, if he wants to. And I don't think he has any limits, and I don't think that there's anything inherent about Germany. I think the Germans shouldn't fool themselves there, that would keep him from doing that in principle. And he didn't do that for whatever reasons. Trump was on reasonably good behavior. Although, if you look carefully at this clip, right, I mean, I don't know if Matt's English, after all, isn't that good, or if he is not so good at reading the room, the finer points of the mood. But Trump was definitely hazing him a little bit, humiliating him a tiny little bit, He was condescending. The thing about congratulating on his English, that was a little poisonous, and that was all done on purpose, It was like, you remember that old show that Trump had, The Apprentice, right? It was like Trump being nice to an apprentice.
Yes.
But still an apprentice, right?
But by the way,
there was power play there as well,
Yeah, but Trump also mentioned the Nord Stream, by the way, and during one of his, this exchanges with Merz, he said that initially he stopped the Nord Stream 2 pipelines, and this is the video where he spoke about it.
Are you willing to put more pressure on Putin to end the war by imposing new sanctions on Russia and also on China?
Well, remember, I'm the one that ended Nord Stream 2, going to a place called Germany, come to think of it. I'm sorry I did that. But I ended Nord Stream 2. Nobody else did. And then when Biden came in, he immediately approved it. That's essentially the largest pipeline in the world, going to Germany and other countries. And by the way, we have so much oil and gas, you will not be able to buy it all. I mean, you literally, we have so much, and I hope we're going to make that a part of our trade deal because we have more than anybody else. We have actually the most, by far, in the world, probably double what anyone else has. So we'll work on that. I'm sure that's something we'll discuss today.
Mr. President.
The US has a lot of gas, but they have an expensive gas. Is that an information that was missing from the conversation? Because
No,
he's
of course
trying.
it's not missing. Because, in the grand scheme of things, politicians in Germany will not admit this, but in the grand scheme of things is Germany has replaced a certain degree of energy dependence on Russia, which did exist, but was manageable actually, with energy dependence of a much more severe sort on the United States. More severe because it's more expensive, and also because our dependency on the United States in general is much greater. So the United States now have all these resources bundled in their hand, right? Which is very convenient for them. But I should say one thing about Nord Stream, right? Whatever Trump says, who exactly stopped Nord Stream, let's remember, just for our audience, at the beginning, for about a year, we were told it was the Russians, right? And people like Carlo Mazzala, I remember it very well, his explanations of this absolutely absurd claim, right? And then slowly people began to admit it cannot really have been the Russians. It makes no sense, right? And now we have an official story that it was the Ukrainians alone, and the CIA even warned them against it. This is now the Spiegel line, of course. We all have to believe that. And now Trump comes in and says, it was me. So look, we all know, everybody who's completely brain dead knows that a combination of Ukraine and our so-called Western allies bombed our infrastructure in the greatest eco-terrorist attack in Germany's peacetime history, right? And in Europe's peacetime history. That's what really happened here. Now, here's the interesting thing. There's something here in the background currently, which is there's a guy called Michael P. Lynch, I think, and he's an American investor, a very interesting figure, who is currently based in Miami, but is doing business everywhere in the world. And his idea is to reactivate Nord Stream, to buy it on the cheap at a great discount. There's a good article on this, actually, for once in the New York Times recently, and then restore it in a cooperation, actually, between Americans and Russians. This Michael P. Lynch has already talked to officials in Germany, in German ministries. He has at the beginning of May. And they're completely quiet about this talk and they don't want to comment on it. Now, Merz came out about a week ago or something and said, we will never let Nord Stream go online again. You remember that,
Yes.
right? He did that in Germany. So there's a whole tug of war going on here. Trump personally hasn't declared his hand, but this Michael P. Lynch, this investor who has declared his hand and who wants to do this, is, among other things, somebody who has contributed fairly heavily, $700,000 we know about, to Trump's campaign, right? So he's in that orbit.
Yes.
Now, imagine this outcome, right? The Germans and the Russians have a pipeline over which both the Germans and the Russians have a reasonable say.
Yes.
The Americans first block that pipeline every way they can by all sorts of legal maneuvers, court suits, and so on. And then they help blow it up or are involved directly. Bam, it's gone. A few years later, the Americans gang up with the Russians, set up the pipeline again, and then sell the gas to the Europeans and the Germans. So that would be the ultimate irony of an outcome, right?
Yes.
That would basically be, we blew up your pipeline with the Russians. We forced you Germans to obediently repeat that you're thankful for that because you're so afraid of the Russians. And now we are ganging up with the Russians and we will have basically you in our hands, both of us, the Russians and the Americans. So Nord Stream is right now, it's not over. It's not an over topic. And all of this, I think, was in the background when Trump talked about this. And here's one thing people in Germany should very carefully note. He didn't say, I'm against reactivating it. He said, hey, remember, I stopped it. And in Trump world, this can mean two things. One is, I stopped it, therefore I would never reactivate it. But the other is, I stopped it, therefore I have the right and the credibility to start it again if I feel like it.
Yes.
I think it's the latter.
I think also that's why Friedrich Merz made a statement before he went to the United States that he will do everything in his capacity to not restart the Nord Stream pipelines, which is basically a German infrastructure in this case. This is the second chancellor I see standing next to an American president. The first one was with Joe Biden, the previous chancellor, and now the current chancellor, Scholz, and now Merz with. And both of them, when they speak about the issue of the Nord Stream, you feel like there is the element of sarcasm when they're speaking, like, or even a disrespect to a leader like the German leader, because they're speaking about an infrastructure belonging to Germany. It's German interest, but then Americans want to pretend that they can decide for Germany in this case.
And they have. And they have. And the Germans have spent their time saying thank you over and over again. So here's the thing. I see what you mean. And I agree with that there's something very strange happening here with these German chancellors. But I personally I wouldn't quite call it sarcasm. I think sarcasm is what you see on the side of Trump, or maybe Biden in his way. And with Scholz and now Merz, what you see is fear. They're basically afraid. They have Nord Stream is an issue that is now so much in the area of direct, very brutal American geopolitical interest. And the Americans have shown how brutal they can be with the Germans, whether the Germans are formally allies or not, right? I think it's basically fear. I have to tell you, I don't want to psychologize too much, but I get it that Merz was trying to smile at the journalists when he was standing outside with Trump. But he looked to me what you call in German beflissen, eager to please, really eager to please. And I'm not quite sure who he was trying to please so much. The journalists outside there, the Americans looking at him and Trump, or, of course, his host immediately, Trump. I think that a lot of Germans that I see now in the responses are a little bit dreamy about Germany's place and about Merz's place. And there is this idea to sell this trip as if Merz had somehow asserted himself or had asserted Germany's position. Nothing of the sort has happened. And in every substantial respect, Germany is very much still doing what it has always done and has done increasingly since the Ukraine war. It is following compliantly whoever is in charge in Washington.
Guys, I just want to say, those who are commenting from Rumble, their comments started to pop up on this stream because there was a technical issue between StreamYard and Rumble, and I couldn't show the comments in the past 2 to 3 weeks, and now it's again showing. So that's all the comments are coming on the screen, so that as you can see, I don't hide any comments. I don't suppress any comments. I don't delete any comments, even if somebody coming and cursing me like the
What kind of journalist are you?
last
You're
stream.
supposed to suppress comments.
some people came in the last stream when I was speaking about Syria, and apparently they like Jolani so much that they had to feel the urge to curse all my family, and I wanted them to continue because they only shows their level of intellectualism. I want to stay with you, Tarik, in Germany, but not in Germany particularly, but a German politician who was the foreign minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock. She's now elected, and this is the official post on the UN News website. It says, breaking: Annalena Baerbock of Germany elected as president of the General Assembly at its 80th session on September, so between September 2025 to September 2026, the total ballots were 188, abstentions were 14. So votes, Annalena Baerbock basically received 167 votes, and Helga Schmidt received 7 votes. I also want to bring the attention to a report published by Die Welt. The German newspaper says the ex-Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has been elected, but then they say that according to Federal Foreign Office, the salary of the new president of the UN General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, will be paid from the federal budget. The former foreign minister is therefore classified grade B9, which corresponds to the head of a large German diplomatic mission. The salary regulations provide for a monthly salary of a good 13,000 euros to Annalena Baerbock. So
clever girl.
So we, the taxpayer money, we are financing the salary of Annalena Baerbock at her position in the UN.
Also, of somebody who has just been voted out. Actually, right?
Actually.
The taxpayers in their capacity as voters have just told this person, we don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
and Tarik, if we criticize her, she will come after us legally. So we pay for her salary, and if we criticize her work, she comes after us legally. Is that like, it's really crazy?
Look, talking about legally, you know what, Annalena? If you're seeing this, if you're watching this, your legal trouble in the future is going to be so immense. You cannot imagine in what trouble you will be, because you have become complicit in an ongoing genocide. And it will only take a few more years until the International Court of Justice, highest court of the UN, for which you're working now, by the way, will confirm this. This will be confirmed. And all your actions in helping supply Israel with weapons over 1.5 years or so, while you were in office, while this genocide was going on, will actually become culpable and will be incriminated. I at least very much hope so. So talking about legal trouble, Annalena, you just wait. So here's the thing about this election, right, at the UN. First of all, it's not an election. A lot of people and the German government is now trying to obfuscate this, muddy the waters. This is not a real election. This is a formality. These people for this position are usually acclaimed unanimously, right? This is what's really happening there. This is not a competitive election. And the fact that some people wrote in Helga Schneider was her name, I think.
Helga Schmidt, I think.
Helga Schmidt, exactly.
Yeah.
Helga Schmidt's name doesn't mean she was on the ballot. She wasn't on the ballot. This was an autocratic election with one person on the ballot, namely Annalena Baerbock. So the people who wrote in that name actually were rebelling against the way in which Baerbock, and everybody knows this, has in an extremely unethical way snatched this job from this German top diplomat, Schmidt, who was actually slotted for it. This is what happened here. This is what actually happened here, right? Baerbock, when the German coalition under Scholz fell apart, Baerbock was looking around and she could see, I'm not going to be foreign minister much longer, but I want to have something else out of this, because that's the way she is. And so she got herself this thing in New York. If the coalition under Scholz had lasted longer, Schmidt would have entered her office and this door would have closed for Annalena Baerbock. She's very calculating. But since this coalition government ended early because it collapsed, right, last year, that's why Annalena Baerbock still had the chance of pulling this trick. And that's what it is. It's an extremely dirty trick. And everybody around us here in this world, 192 or 91 other members of the UN, of course, know this if they're interested in this. They know that Germany has sent somebody who basically sort of forced her way in an extremely unprofessional, extremely demeaning way into this position. So what were they supposed to do, right? I know it's a secret ballot, right? But still, in the UN, these things are also being talked about. So if you're a small country and you, for instance, get some form of development aid or investment from Germany, you're not going to rebel. It's not your business. The Germans didn't stop her. It's not your business. So you do what you do every time and you vote for the suggested person. The scandal here is that she didn't get all the votes. Usually these people get all the votes. So any attempt to say she got a very high vote count only betrays that these people have no idea how this actually works. In this type of vote, you get them all or you're already a loser. And that's what's happened to her. Moreover, as I think Florian Warwick pointed out at the Bundespressekonferenz, it seems
Florian Warwick is one of the best German journalists, by the way, guys. For those who are looking for a good journalist in Germany, here is a name for you. You can go and watch his questions in the press conferences of the government in Germany with a very calm voice, with a very calm attitude, asking the hard questions, and then the spokespersons, they can't even answer his questions.
No, they never can. So here's the thing. Warwick, in his question, said it's possible that the dissenting votes are not many, but that they came from BRICS states, including very large states. And if this is true, and you think about how many people they represent, not just the votes in the assembly, but the people on the globe they represent, it is possible that about half of humanity has not voted for Annalena Baerbock.
Yes. Oh my God.
So this whole thing stings to a high heaven. It's a scandal. It's embarrassing. It's horrible. It displays that the German state cannot control a careerist maneuver like the one she pulled off. It is a disgrace that we let somebody like that use the German state, the cabinet, the mechanism she abused to get herself essentially a little gig, like, you know, an overpaid internship at the UN because she wanted to spend a year in New York. That's what happened here.
I will show a video, and I want to specifically focus on two things in this video, which I watched it over and over again because it is telling about the personality of Annalena Baerbock. And this video was when she was elected, and she was called into this podium to say something in English. So first things first, I want you to focus on her face when she comes to the podium to speak and how she looks.
Baerbock will deliver some remarks, after which we will open the floor to a few questions. Excellency, you have the floor.
This look, first of all, this look is telling so much for me.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm grateful to the UN member states for entrusting me with the role as President of the UN General Assembly.
I noticed, Tarik, something when I watched this video, that her capability to read from the paper is exclusive to 2 to 3 words. After every 2 and 3 words, she has to look into the paper because she cannot see more than 2 and 3 words. And I know this when I watch this.
In its upcoming 80th session.
Look.
I'm honored to take on this task in September and guide the work of the most representative body of the United Nations.
I am beyond mind-boggling, not because it's Annalena Baerbock, but this position of the UN at least needs a competent person. It seems this has become more like a career of people who have connections and know people, serve them, we serve you. This position is like a cadeau for you.
Yeah, it's a sinecure. But look, there are some people who have argued that all of this isn't so bad because, you know, the position itself is sort of a bit formalistic and doesn't have much power. We usually don't know the names of these people. Look, all of this may be true, but if the position was relatively obscure, let's put it like this before, Germany, with this behavior, has actually cast a spotlight on it. We have cast a spotlight on it, and it puts Germany in a very bad light. Because what we have done is we have sent somebody who very many Germans have learned is extremely incompetent. We're constantly making jokes about her, and they are all deserved. She is very, very incompetent. And we have basically said, well, that's good enough for the UN General Assembly. And if you think about what the UN General Assembly is, it's not the Security Council, right? It's the place where everyone, the whole world is represented. So when you think about the relative demographic weight of different parts of the world, the UN Assembly, in terms of numbers of human beings who are represented there, it's very much about the global South. It's much less about the West and the global North. It's much more about the global South. And Annalena Baerbock is somebody who, for me, also represents an enormous, breathtaking, provincial arrogance of the global North and West towards the global South, among other things, because it seems to never have bothered her that the Israelis, whom she has supported to the hilt, right, in the genocide of the Palestinians, are, among other things, colonial representatives of the global North, slaughtering brown people. Annalena Baerbock never actually registered that that's a problem. This is one of the most unpopular people ever in the global South. I can guarantee you that. Whatever the famous Radwege in Peru or whatever, right? That isn't the point. The global South sees this person to a large extent as part of the people who betrayed Gaza and who became accomplices in the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians. That's what they're seeing. And we, shamelessly, our state, sent this person over there and said, that's good enough for you. None of this escapes attention. This is all part of this new German tendency of making themselves as unloved, I'm putting this very carefully here, as they possibly can in very large parts of the world that are actually up and coming.
You know, one of the pages which continuously mocks her on social media is her parody account on X that she tried to close, shut it down, and she tried to sue them. And they say, erste Pressekonferenz in New York, souverän gekleistert.
Look, if I can say one...
Please go.
No.
I want, because you said about Gaza and her complicity in this, and I wanted to remind our audience of this video.
Die Selbstverteidigung bedeutet natürlich, dass man Terroristen nicht nur angreift, sondern zerstört. Deswegen habe ich so klar und deutlich gemacht, wenn Hamas-Terroristen sich hinter Menschen, hinter Schulen verschanzen, dann bekommen wir in ganz schwierige Themenbereiche rein, aber wir ducken uns davor nicht weg. Deswegen habe ich vor den Vereinten Nationen deutlich gemacht, dann können auch zivile Orte ihren Schutzstatus verlieren, weil Terroristen das missbrauchen. Dazu steht Deutschland und das bedeutet für uns Sicherheit Israels.
This will come to haunt her. Exactly as Habeck will be haunted by his preaching about reason of state, Staatsräson. All of this is on record. All of this they can't get rid of anymore. And it's not only that. I remember very well that in the early phase of this genocide, but it was bad enough. We could already tell, right? She went to one of these extremely expensive little party conferences in Switzerland, one of these Davos things, and put herself on a stage. And she argued positively against a ceasefire at this time, against a ceasefire, because she then said, a ceasefire has to be sustainable. It can't just drop from the sky. That's the language she used while people were being massacred systematically by the Israeli Air Force, right? Yes. So this woman, here's the thing about Annalena Baerbock. There is her enormous incompetence. There is her way in which she mangles German. I mean, a lot of English speakers won't know this, but look, we both know German and English, and we know that she mangles both languages. She is a native speaker of German, but she can't speak German. Her German isn't much better than her English. It's horrific. She's the only person I know who sort of translates, if it's a word, horrific German into horrific English. That's Annalena Baerbock. And all of these things make you underestimate her in a very strange way, because she becomes this butt of jokes. And as every butt of jokes, you don't take her very seriously anymore. But there is another side to her. And that other side, history will say, is accomplice to genocide. Accomplice to genocide. That will be written in the history books. And if she wants to sue about this, she can try.
Yeah. Oh, Tarik, I think in this case, unfortunately speaking, even the opposition parties inside Germany, which they were able to capitalize on the complicity of the Greens, the SPDs, and the others in the onslaught against the Palestinians in Gaza, they haven't even done that. Although that was a very attractive file to destroy the career of the opposition, but almost all of them, unfortunately, are not saying a word about the human rights of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Can I give you an example, if I have time? This figure from the German, from the junior Greens, like the little Greens, the kiddie Greens, right? Jette Neidhardt or Neidhardt or whatever her name is, I can't remember. Now she comes out, and she says, but what happened on October the 23rd, when the Palestinians broke out of the ghetto, broke out of the concentration camp that Gaza was even then, according to an Israeli sociologist, right? When they did that, she says now, that was a military operation. Now she's saying that. And the implications, of course, are vast. Because if you say this was not just a terrorist killing spree, but a legitimate national resistance military operations, as I said then, because it was obvious, and as many other objective observers said then, but nobody wanted to listen. If you say that, you are admitting that the whole Israeli narrative and the Western narrative is false through and through. Because while Hamas may have committed some crimes during this attack, the attack itself, I repeat it here, was legitimate because occupied people have a right. It's a right under international law to armed resistance. Now, I know that a lot of people in the ZDF can't get this into their concrete brains, but that's a fact of international law. If Hamas also committed some crimes during this attack, that doesn't take away that right. The crimes are, so to speak, individual and can be persecuted, but it was still, in large part, a legitimate military operation which also targeted a lot of Israeli military installations and soldiers. And they had a right to do this. This was legitimate. Apart from the fact, of course, that we don't know how many, but we know a considerable number of the Israeli victims of that day were actually killed by Israelis under the so-called Hannibal Directive, right? Let's just add that. But now we get this, and now this is causing a scandal. And this, Jette person can feel like a little hero. Where has she been up until now? While her party was in government, and the foreign minister of her party and the minister of economics of her party, Robert Habeck, all covered the genocide.
Yeah. Oh, I have a lot of things to say about the Greens. Unfortunately, I am unable to say and express my opinions freely while I am here because they are very, very, I would say, harmful people, and they come after you, after your finances, after your career, after your jobs, after your education, and they have a lot of leverage. Yeah, they are in different government buildings. It's crazy. One day, they're
like Zionists. They play dirty by habit.
Therefore, I will just swallow the words and wait for my situation to get better, and then probably I will tell my full mind about the Green Party of Germany in this case. Guys, we do this conversation once per week, every Friday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. This show is called Cold War 2.0. And we were discussing global political issues, geopolitics, Russia and Europe, Ukraine, China, United States, multipolarity, unipolarity. So if you're liking this show and you like the opinions, or you're interested in the opinions also of Tarik is publishing his regular articles on Substack. As you can see, it's scrolling on the screen, substack.com/@Tarik Cyril Amar, or you can simply type his name in Substack and you can find him. And if you're liking this conversation between us, the brilliant thing to do is thumbs up, hit the likes button, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Tarik, I watched a video of the chief of NATO, Mark Rutte, who was the prime minister of the Netherlands, and under his watch, he funneled around 90 million euros to Syria, to an organization which is proscribed as a terrorist organization by the Netherlands itself, called Jabhat al-Shamiyya. So in the Netherlands, they classify it as a terrorist organization, and he sent 90 million euros to this organization, non-lethal aid, which is pickup trucks, computers, satellite phones, and cameras, and many things that could be used basically in acts.
We call that logistics. That's military logistics.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But non-lethal. So now he's the chief of NATO. I think this is very fitting for his credentials. And he suggested that NATO was the most powerful defense alliance in the world history. And it's even more powerful than the Roman Empire. And more powerful than Napoleon's empire. We are the most powerful defense alliance in the world in history today. Let's take a look what he has to say about this.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what we have. NATO is the most powerful defense alliance in world history. It's even more powerful than the Roman Empire. And more powerful than the Napoleon Empire. We are the most powerful defense alliance in world history. But the defense alliance needs maintenance and needs investment. And that's exactly why in NATO we have this whole system, the NATO defense planning process, now leading to an agreement on the capability targets. And that means that we will have exact clarity on where are we and where should we be if we want to be able to defend ourselves not only today but also in 3, 5, 7 years. Listen to the German chief of defense who said this week on the record that within 4 or 5 years the Russians might be able to attack us. Well, I and all my colleagues want to prevent that because we want to stay free. We value our way of life and we don't want any form of Russian dominance over NATO territory.
Tarik.
I don't even know where to start. Look, first of all, of course, the Roman Empire and the Napoleonic Empire. I think he was trying to say Napoleonic Empire, right?
Yes.
They were not defense alliance by any stretch of the imagination. The Roman Empire was essentially, a slave-holding, upper-class dominated, very brutal military machine on a rampage, right? That's the Roman Empire in reality. I mean, look, the Romans, I know that there are a lot of bros out there who have watched Gladiator too often, they think the Romans are so interesting. Okay, all right. They knew how to organize armies for a while. They had some engineering. But, even culturally, come on, there's nothing there. It's all stolen from the Greeks. I mean, they're really not that impressive, right? They're just enormous bullies. And for a while, it works really well. So, and Napoleon's empire, of course, also very funny because that's basically a sort of mafiotic family clan, right? It belonged to him personally and takes over Europe. It's amazing, right? And ends very badly, by the way. It's not a good happy end story.
Yes.
So I really don't know what this guy is thinking, why he makes comparisons like that are completely unnecessary for his argument and that they wouldn't have to bring up at all. But that aside, right, his history fantasies or whatever we call that, that aside, I love the way they now quote each other, So I think he is referring to the head of the Bundeswehr, the German military, right? Carsten Breuer. So he goes in and says, Carsten Breuer has said that the Russians are coming. Case proved. If Carsten Breuer has said it, then of course we don't have any questions, right? Every reasonable person knows that right now there's basically one memo circulating throughout all of NATO, EU, Europe, which is, and it's been circulating for a while, they're all stirring up war hysteria together. And none of them, from Breuer to Rutte to Carlo Mazzala, Sönke Neitzel, and all those heroes, Kaya Kallas, none of them has actually any real evidence. It's complete nonsense. There is no evidence at all that Russia plans to attack NATO. It is true that Russia is fighting a war in Ukraine, and it is our fault, it is NATO's fault that we have treated Ukraine as if it was a de facto member, but it's not. It's not. So there's a big, big difference. And there is no actual evidence that Russia plans to attack NATO. What they're all pointing to is that Russia has developed its military very strongly. The number of soldiers has gone up, the military-industrial complex is very active. That's all true. But guess what the explanation is? That you, the West, have fought a proxy war against them. That's why they're doing this. And then you take that reaction to our provocation from the West and you say, oh, that shows they're planning to attack us. I mean,
yes.
Whoever still believes this is a ridiculous story. It's a completely idiotic story. It doesn't make any sense. And I can assure you that in 1 month, Carsten Breuer, the head of the military who Rutte quotes, is going to quote Rutte and say, Rutte has said they're going to come. It's idiotic. They're just throwing balls at each other by now. So that's the second thing.
Tarik, but many people disagree with you. Like, for example, the geostrategic analyst and theorist Kaya Kallas says that the attacks of Ukraine last week, the drone attacks on Russia, were spectacular military move. And this is exactly like how she portrayed it.
And then, of course, we have seen over the last weekend this drone attacks of Ukraine that are rewriting the military history. I mean, they used thousands, drones costing thousands to take out planes costing millions. So I think this is clearly bringing the cost up also for the Russians, again, so that Russians would also want peace.
The woman has no idea what she's talking about, not even on her own terms. Ukraine. Does she even read what the Ukrainians say? Not that that's reliable. Ukraine has been talking about 142, 47 drones or something like that in total being used. If she has thousands of drones in her head, I believe her. There's a lot of going on there, but it's not reality. So the other thing is, of course, it was not this historic sneak attack that rewrites military history. It wasn't. What happened is that the Ukrainians at first said on the day of the attack, we destroyed 41 planes. And everybody in the West copied that because this is how Western media operates. They just copy what they say. Like, it's like with Zionists, right? The Ukrainians and Zionists have this privilege. You can say whatever you want to, just write it down. Nobody checks you, right? So in reality, the next day, the Ukrainians themselves very, very quietly came out and said, oh, maybe it was more like 12, actually. And meanwhile, some people estimated 5 and 6. Now, the Russian ministry has not given us figures, which makes sense because you don't do that. The Ukrainians wouldn't do it either, by the way. But we know that the dimension of the attack was much smaller than the Ukrainians initially claimed, and that it was not this crippling attack on a major part of Russia's nuclear deterrence. In other forms, I can tell you what history this attack will actually belong to, and people will hate me for this, but it's true. It will belong to the history of terrorism. Because what they've used, you can argue whether this was either you can see this legally as terrorism, as the Russians do, they have good reasons, or you can say this was a special ops operation, but if you do that, you have to admit and contain the war crime. Namely, specifically the war crime of perfidy. We can go into that, but those are the two options. One way or the other, very dirty stuff. But the problem is, all states do stuff like that. I'm not naive. But the problem in this is, the Ukrainians set a new standard. They provided a model. You even now have already headlines in the US, and these people are right, that the real significance of this is that it could be done to them as well. So they have created an enormous amount of additional insecurity. I think it was, I can't remember his name, I wished I could quote him and attribute properly, but one of the major experts who I listened to, and it was a very smart guy, said, look, what are we supposed to do now? Check every shipping container in the world all the time? Because that's the new fashion, pack them full of drones and then attack.
Like the Israelis did with the pagers.
Exactly. It is similar to the pager attack. And in a similar way, it's incredibly destabilizing. Also, don't forget, on the same day when they attacked these airfields, and 3 of them they didn't even reach, they reached 2, right? So another point where we want to be realistic. When the Ukrainians attacked the airfields with the automated drones, hidden in the civilian trucks, which is a crime, on the same day they sabotaged 2 railway bridges in western border regions of Russia. And there were casualties, 7 civilians killed, and over 100 injured, partly very badly, because the explosions on the bridges over the railways or under the railways were triggered when there were trains. This was done on purpose, of course, right? When you blow up a bridge in war, you have 2 options. You blow it up when it's empty, you do a certain amount of damage to the logistics of your enemy, or you wait until someone is there, until there's a train, and then you blow it up and you also cause a lot of casualties. That's what the Ukrainians did, and they did it to civilians. So when you take all of this together, this was a day in which the Ukrainians engaged in a mix of what is clearly terrorism. The bridge attacks were terrorism. Case closed. And a tactic that is either a war crime or terrorism. And all the West stood by and clapped, including geniuses like Koyukolos, right? It's horrific. The Russians look at this. It's not only generally destabilizing, but once more, the West shows the Russians that you cannot possibly trust us. In addition, of course, because the Russians know that the Ukrainians could not have done all of this alone. They may not know exactly who, but they will have to assume that the Ukrainians has Western help.
Yeah. Guys, the beginning of, or the title of this video, the first half of the title of this video is about the feud between, or I don't know what to call a civil war between Trump and Elon Musk. So I kept that to the end of this conversation, and it started with a bromance. Yeah, it started as a bromance, and Elon Musk moved from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
He did
lots of Trump. He moved Trump.
Yeah, lots of drama, and he financed also Trump's presidential campaign. And now it seems there is a serious rift between these both characters. Some people were speculating this and saying that both characters are very, stubbornish or bossish. So now this clash of titans have arrived. I just want to show a very short clip of Trump when he speaks about this.
We've done a great job. Elon knew that. Elon endorsed me very strongly. He actually went up and campaigned for me. I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him. But if you pick Shapiro or anybody else, I spoke to him recently about his house being set on fire, which was terrible. But if they picked him, I would have won Pennsylvania. I won it by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem. And he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars. And it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have we want to be able to sell everything. And when that was cut, and Congress wanted to cut it, it became a little bit different. And I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody. And he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape, he said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Tarik, what the hell is happening between Elon and Donald Trump? You published an article today about this.
Yeah, I wrote one. Is it out already? I haven't seen it. So look, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know because we are not close enough to these guys, right? But from what you can see from outside, I think the conflict is real. So I don't agree with the people who say this is all just huge theater, right? No. And I think part of the reason has to do with what you already mentioned. Then these are both extreme narcissists. And they lost their cool and they got very, very angry with each other. And they really started trying to hurt each other in a bad way, right? This isn't theater. They were serious. That doesn't mean it will last forever. Trump, with all his projection of this Iron Man personality and being the big bruiser, Trump gives in too. I mean, you know what they say about him now in the United States, right? They use the acronym TACO. Trump always chickens out. And there's a reason for that, because he also knows how to retreat. He just doesn't talk about it. And the same is true for Musk. Musk has knuckled under to Brazil. Musk is knuckling under constantly to Israel, but like hell. So Musk can also retreat. This whole alpha male image that they're trying to create for themselves, it's not quite true in the end. It's not quite true. So they might get together again or learn to live with each other or live in a cold peace or something, but it won't be the same again. That I do think, because they've shown each other how brutal they are ready to get with each other, and they won't forget that. Now, what's the reason for all of this? Here's one thing I would credit Musk with. I don't believe what Trump is implying. Trump is implying in this clip that Musk is only angry because Tesla is going to lose an estimated, I take this from another place, $1.2 billion because the subsidies of for the electric vehicles are going to go. That's what Trump is saying, right? Musk is only angry because I basically hit his own Tesla company. Yeah. I think this plays a role for Musk. It probably makes him even bitterer. But I also think, and this is not a compliment, that Musk is, with part of his personality, a fanatical ideologue. And that this deficit hawk thing that he's running, and this idea that he has to fight the public debt, the sovereign debt of the United States, because otherwise it will explode the United States, that is genuine with Musk, I think, as genuine as things get with him. Now, here's another wrinkle, another complication, I believe, which is Musk has one point at least. He has one point, which is that the sovereign debt of the United States is an enormous economic and geopolitical problem for the United States, for all of us in a way, but for the United States, first of all. And it is estimated, quite seriously, that if Trump actually gets through his tax bill, that triggered all of this, a big tax bill, right? They're talking about now in Congress and the Senate, that if he gets that through the way it is now, it will add $3.3 trillion to the sovereign debt of the United States over the next decade, right? Yes. This made Musk wild, and I believe him that that is actually true. I believe him that that's true. So this is where this seems to be coming from. But then there's something else which I find very interesting, which is that Musk started mentioning the Epstein files, the Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, right? And in essence, he says Trump is on the list. He's on the list of the clients of Jeffrey Epstein, which would mean that Trump can be blackmailed, because everybody who's not a complete idiot has long understood that the Epstein operation was an intelligence-linked operation collecting compromat, stuff with which you can blackmail people, right? Because I think that Epstein entrapped them in committing crimes against minors and women, and that then they have some sort of recordings of that, and with that, everybody who was there on that famous Lolita Express and on the Epstein Island has been blackmailed ever since. This is why he committed suicide in a Manhattan jail, right? Yeah. The intelligence service behind this, I'm just going to say it, most likely Israel. I'm sorry, but I've had it. It's most likely Israel. So this is a horrible, horrible accusation to launch against Trump. It may very well be true. So if that is the case, then Musk's phrase, "I just can't stand it anymore," or something like that, which he tweeted at the beginning, it might also be, if you want to give him a lot of credit, about no longer being able to stand living in this enormous web of lies. Not that Musk is a saint. there are people who have constructed that even Musk may have had much more of a relationship to Epstein than he cares to admit. So let's be very careful there. There are, in other words, different and very sinister layers here, right? What exactly drove Musk to start this? Because Musk started it. He wouldn't just walk away from his job. He started this, right? And what exactly drove Trump to counter-escalate as brutally as he did, with threats that he would take away government contracts from Musk and all that stuff, I don't know. I don't know.
I wanted to show a video of one of the brilliant journalists talking about Musk and his relationship basically with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that he also has he had a relationship with him. That doesn't mean that he was a pedophile, doesn't mean that he was schooling kids. The same thing goes for Donald Trump. He was on the list. We don't know what he was doing, but he was definitely been in touch with Epstein, which is it's by itself is suspicious. However, there is also an argument, Tarik, and this is the last point I want to make before we wrap up today's conversation, and that is Musk is also trying probably to create a rift in the administration, trying to bring JD Vance. As in JD Vance is already on his side, and JD Vance is the person or is sponsored by Peter Thiel at Palantir. And they wanted to create some sort of a technocracy, which it seems that Trump didn't wasn't too easy to accept that, and now they are coming full assault on Trump because they want to create this post-democratic governance system in the United States based on technocracy and also technology and AI, which they,
I mean, let me add one thing. They don't have a democracy. I mean this very seriously. The United States is not a democracy, right? But they want to have something even worse, actually.
Yes, exactly. And this is why even Elon Musk said on X that he supports the impeachment of Donald Trump. This is crazy to say. I mean, if you knew he is on the Epstein list, if you knew, and it is true that he is on the list, and he was screwing kids, basically. Sorry for the terminology.
Whatever was going on there.
But then you funded this person to come to power.
Oh my God! Right?
Right? Like you were with him. Like only recently you separated because of.
And the only reason why you are now saying it is because you are now changing sides. So it's all just a currency for you. You know, it doesn't really matter in and of itself. Yes. The cynicism is through the roof, as always. And they don't even think they have to hide it.
Imagine if something like this happened, let's say, among government circles, leadership circles in Russia or China. This would have been a global scandal to the extent that we need the responsibility to protect and military intervention in this country.
Bellingcat would be all over it. Bellingcat, MI6, I mean. Well, Bellingcat, MI6, it'd be all over it, right? Christo Grozev, and what's her name again? The Russian American who they used to fire at Putin in New York, Marsha Guess, Christo Grozev and Marsha Guess, to be honest.
But one of the other day, somebody sent me an article. It's an old one, like 3-4 years ago, and they're speaking about me and how far-right, dangerous person I am. And I checked the references, and there were 3 of the references from Bellingcat.
You made
Bellingcat people.
You made it. You've arrived in life.
The MI6 people saying like, anyways. Tarik, I'm very happy to have you today on the show and having this brilliant conversation with you. And I apologize for coming late today on the show due to my technical problem with my watch. Next week, I promise not to do that. And next week, guys, we're going to do this show again. Of course, every Friday, Cold War 2.0, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time with our dear friend Tarik Cyril Amar. If you're liking this content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video and share it with your friends, and also follow Tarik on Substack. The link is also in the description below. Today is Friday, right, Tarik? Today is Friday. So we're going to take now 2 days off, and Monday I will come back to you guys again at the same time with another live streaming. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Tarik, again for coming to the show.
Thank you,
and we will see you soon, guys. Have a great weekend. Peace be upon you, upon your families.
Bye-bye.